Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
What happens when a beloved Hollywood icon walks into a morning talk show expecting a simple interview about nostalgia, family, and the legacy of the Karate Kid, only to find himself pushed into a fiery showdown he never saw coming? What you're about to hear is the moment Ralph Macchio, one of the calmest, most soft-spoken actors in the industry, reached his breaking point live on The View. It started as a friendly chat, the kind you'd expect on a weekday morning. But the second Joy Behar steered the conversation toward the heated question of whether modern music is corrupting today's youth, everything changed. Ralph thought he was giving a thoughtful, balanced take. Joy decided he wasn't being strong enough, and in a matter of minutes, the tone shifted from playful to confrontational, then from confrontational to explosive. The audience gasped, the co-hosts froze, even Whoopi looked stunned. And then, Ralph Macchio, calm, patient Ralph, stood up, shook his head, and walked off the set in front of millions watching at home. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was a complete on-air meltdown that nobody saw coming. Let's break down exactly how a simple conversation spiraled into one of the most shocking walk-offs in daytime TV history.
The episode started with the warm, upbeat tone that The View prides itself on. The live audience clapped as Ralph Macchio stepped onto the stage, smiling as he waved, that familiar, gentle charm immediately lifting the room. The co-hosts rose from their seats to greet him, and for a moment it felt like classic daytime TV, relaxed, nostalgic, and safe. "Ralph, you haven't aged a day," Whoopi joked as he sat down. Ralph laughed. "My mother appreciates you saying that more than I do." Even Joy Behar cracked a grin. "Well, some of us are out here fighting gravity every morning. I don't know what deal you made with the universe, but it's working." The crowd laughed, and Ralph took a moment to look around. "It's great to be back. I always love the energy here." Sarah Haynes leaned in. "We were just saying backstage how surreal it is that the Karate Kid is now a multi-generational thing. Kids today know you just as well as their parents did." "It's wild," Ralph admitted. "I'll be at the grocery store and some teenager will shout, 'Cobra Kai never dies.' I still get startled." Denise chimed in. "Do your kids get embarrassed, or are they used to having a dad everyone recognizes?" "Oh, they've moved past embarrassment. Now they use it against me. If they're trying to get out of chores, suddenly it's, 'Dad, but you're Daniel LaRusso. You should rest.'" The audience burst into laughter. Even Joy seemed to enjoy the moment. They shifted into talking about Cobra Kai. Ralph shared a few behind-the-scenes stories describing long filming days, late-night script reads, and how the cast jokingly refers to him as the responsible dad of the set. Sarah asked about his co-stars, and Ralph lit up. "William Zabka and I still argue like Daniel and Johnny sometimes, but it's all love. We're like an old married couple who never signs the divorce papers." The set felt lively, energetic, and full of affection. This was the Ralph everyone knew, sincere, playful, humble. The co-hosts leaned in, fully engaged. Then Whoopi asked, "What's been keeping you busy outside acting?" Ralph softened a little. "Mostly family. My daughter's gotten into music production lately, so I've been listening to a lot more modern music than I ever used to." Joy clapped her hands. "Ah, so you are keeping up with what the kids are listening to." Ralph nodded. "Trying to. Some of it I love, some of it makes me feel ancient." The audience chuckled again, and Joy smiled, but her eyes shifted with a hint of curiosity, the first tiny spark of where the conversation would unravel later. Sarah circled back to nostalgia. "Do you still get recognized for the crane kick everywhere you go?" "Everywhere," Ralph laughed. "Airports, restaurants, weddings. I once had someone ask me to do it in a parking lot." "Did you do it?" "Of course not. I'm too old to be pulling hamstrings for strangers." The panel laughed again, light and warm. Even Joy shook her head, smiling. But she wasn't done with the earlier comment Ralph made. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "So," Joy said casually, "your daughter's into music, huh? Modern music." Ralph nodded. "Yeah." Joy tilted her head. "And you think some of it makes you feel ancient. Does that mean you think it's actually bad for kids today?" It was still friendly, still harmless, still ordinary. But that question, that tiny shift, was the first crack in the foundation. A crack that would grow wider with every minute that followed, and eventually blow the entire show apart.
Joy Behar's tone sharpened just enough for the viewers at home to notice, even if the studio audience didn't catch it right away. She leaned in, elbows planted on the desk, eyes locked on Ralph like she'd been waiting for this opening. So Ralph, you're saying modern music makes you feel ancient, but what does that actually mean? Do you think it's unhealthy for kids today? Ralph smiled politely, still relaxed. Not unhealthy, just different. A lot of it is very fast-paced, very explicit, pretty intense compared to what we grew up with. Joy cut in before he finished. You think it corrupts them. That's not the word I used, Ralph replied, keeping his voice even. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. Joy, let him finish. But Joy wasn't backing off. She tapped her pen on the table, leaning closer. Come on, Ralph, you're a father. You said some modern music worries you. That sounds like you think it has a negative influence. Ralph looked at the audience, then back at Joy. I think there's a difference between influence and corruption. Kids always gravitate toward whatever is loud, rebellious, or new. It's part of growing up. Sarah nodded. Every generation has their thing. But Joy wasn't done. But do you think this generation's thing is worse? Be honest. The audience reacted with a soft ripple of murmurs. Ralph shifted in his chair, sensing the trap. He chose his words carefully. Look, I think the content is more explicit now. The themes are heavier, but that doesn't mean kids are doomed. Joy, you didn't answer the question. Whoopi shot her a warning look. Joy. No, Joy insisted. If we're going to have this conversation, let's not tiptoe around it. Ralph, you're a public figure. Do you think modern music is corrupting young people more than ever before? This time, the audience gasped, a sharp collective inhale. Ralph blinked, stunned that Joy had phrased it that aggressively. I think some songs push boundaries that didn't used to be pushed, he admitted. But corruption isn't the right word. Joy tossed her pen down. Why not? You think it's too harsh? Because kids aren't robots, Ralph answered. They're influenced by their parents, friends, school, environment, not just whatever song is in the top 40. Denise chimed in gently, trying to calm the tension. Music reflects culture. It doesn't single-handedly create it. Joy shot her a glare. I'm asking Ralph. Ralph finally let out a breath. Okay, but why are you asking me like I'm on trial? The audience laughed nervously. Joy didn't. Because people like you, nostalgic actors, family-friendly figures, keep implying in interviews that today's entertainment is somehow destroying the younger generation, and I think it's unfair. Ralph sat back. Joy, I never said that. You implied it. I literally did not. Whoopi held up a hand. Joy, he didn't. But Joy steamrolled right over the attempt to mediate. I think it's dangerous to paint an entire generation of musicians as corrupting influences just because their music makes you uncomfortable. Ralph's polite smile slipped. I didn't say that either. Joy fired back. Then what did you say? Because you've been dancing around it since we started. The studio temperature seemed to rise. Cameras zoomed in on Ralph's face, catching the moment his expression shifted from patience to irritation. He leaned forward. I'm saying parents have a responsibility, Joy, not musicians, not kids, not culture. Parents. The audience applauded that. Joy's jaw tightened. That sounds like a nice way to avoid criticizing the real problem. Sarah stepped in. What's the real problem? Joy gestured emphatically. These artists are pumping out lyrics filled with sex, violence, profanity. That's been happening since Elvis. Joy shot back. Elvis didn't have TikTok. The audience cracked up. Ralph didn't. He kept his voice low, controlled. You're acting like kids are brainwashed by music. They're not. They're smarter than you're giving them credit for. Joy's face hardened. So now I'm insulting kids. That's what it sounds like. The room went tight, silent, electric. Joy narrowed her eyes. You really want to go there? And for the first time that morning, Ralph Macchio didn't smile. He didn't dodge. He didn't soften his tone. Yes, he said. Maybe I do. The audience erupted, half cheers, half gasps, and the clash was officially underway.
The moment Ralph said, maybe I do, something shifted in the studio. Joy leaned back, eyebrows raised, as if she couldn't believe the quiet, easygoing Ralph Macchio was challenging her directly. The audience buzzed with anticipation. Even the camera operator seemed to inch closer, sensing that the conversation was about to turn personal.
Joy crossed her arms. So enlighten me, Ralph. Since I'm apparently not giving kids enough credit, explain what you think the real issue is. Ralph took a long breath. The real issue is that we blame everything except ourselves. Every decade, adults panic about what kids are listening to. Metal, rap, grunge, pop, EDM. It's the same cycle over and over. Joy cut in. You're oversimplifying it. I'm not, Ralph replied. His tone stayed steady, but there was a hint of frustration underneath. I'm scared of change, that's all. Sarah leaned in carefully. Ralph, earlier backstage, you said something about your daughter directing you toward music that matters to her. You said it brought you closer. That softened him. His voice dropped. Yeah, it did. The audience quieted. Even Joy's expression shifted, just a little. Ralph continued. When my daughter started making music, I didn't get it at first. I'd hear these beats, these lyrics, and think, is this really what kids connect with now? It sounded chaotic to me. He paused. One night, she asked me to listen to a song she wrote. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was about anxiety, pressure, feeling like she was growing up in a world too fast for her. Everything she didn't want to tell me to my face, she put in that song. The room went completely silent. Ralph swallowed, his eyes softening in a way the audience hadn't seen during the argument. Ralph continued. My daughter's generation uses art to survive. Music isn't corrupting them, it's helping them process everything we hand them. A few people in the crowd clapped quietly. Whoopi nodded, visibly moved. Joy finally responded, but her voice was lower than before. That's a powerful story, Ralph, but you're one of the good ones. Most parents aren't listening to their kids the way you are. Ralph shook his head. Then that's the conversation we should be having. Not whether a song on Spotify is turning kids into criminals. Joy tapped her fingers against the desk. But you still said earlier that some music worries you. Sure, but worry isn't the same as panic. It's my job to talk to my kids, not control what artists create. That earned applause. Ralph looked up, a little surprised, then grateful. Joy sat forward again. You make it sound like parents should simply accept everything kids are exposed to. That's not what I said. Then where's the line, Ralph? If kids are overwhelmed, as you put it, shouldn't we protect them from content that plays into that anxiety? Ralph exhaled slowly. We should protect them by supporting them, not censoring their world. Joy opened her mouth to counter, but he raised a hand. I lived through this as a kid. People said my movie was going to encourage kids to fight more. They accused the Karate Kid of romanticizing violence. And you know what happened? Kids wrote me letters saying Daniel inspired them to stand up for themselves. Joy blinked. That's not the same thing. It is, Ralph said. Every generation of adults looks at teen culture and decides it's dangerous. The audience erupted in applause, louder this time. Sarah nodded. He's right, it's a pattern. But Joy wasn't done. Something about Ralph's confidence seemed to hit a nerve. Okay, she said, voice rising slightly, but we're not talking about karate movies from the 80s. We're talking about explicit, hypersexual, aggressive music blasting into the ears of 10-year-olds. Ralph's patience finally cracked a little. And who's handing 10-year-olds an iPhone? Boom. The crowd gasped. A wave of murmurs moved through the studio. Joy froze. Ralph held her gaze, no longer bothered by the tension. Kids don't buy their own devices, he continued. Adults do. Parents do. Schools do. Companies do. So why blame the artists? For the first time all morning, Joy didn't have a quick comeback. She stared down, lips pursed, tapping the table softly. Whoopi leaned toward Ralph. That was a point. The audience broke into full applause. And while that vulnerable, heartfelt moment had moved the room, the debate was far from settled. In fact, Ralph's emotional honesty, as real and raw as it was, only made the next explosion more inevitable. Because Joy Behar does not like losing arguments. And she was about to come back swinging.
The tension in the studio felt thick enough to push around. Ralph tried to steady himself, rolling his shoulders once as if he could shake off the weight of the conversation. Joy leaned back in her chair with her arms folded, acting like she was the calm one in the room. The audience sensed the shift. Every look, every breath, every pause felt sharper now. Sonny tried to ease in again. Maybe we should talk about why people feel that today's music hits differently. There are economic pressures, cultural trends, technology. Joy cut in before she could finish. No. Let's talk about accountability. Ralph is here saying music is poisoning the kids. That's ridiculous. The real issue is lazy parenting. Ralph stared at her like she'd slapped him. Lazy parenting? His voice climbed, but didn't crack. You really think moms and dads across the country aren't trying? You think they aren't working 2 jobs, juggling schedules, trying to give their kids something decent to hold on to? You think they want their kids listening to songs about Xanax and cheating and violence? Joy shrugged. It's a choice. They can turn it off. He gave a stunned half laugh. Joy, parents can't turn off the world. You think a kid walks through school with noise-canceling headphones, filtering out the entire culture? You think their phones magically block out everything? This stuff finds them. It's everywhere. And pretending it's just about good parenting is unfair. Denise raised her brow. Ralph, you're acting like kids are victims. They're not helpless. They pick what they want to hear. And that's exactly the problem, Ralph shot back, when what they want is shaped by algorithms built to push the most sensational, most destructive content because it gets clicks. We're letting corporations raise our kids with no oversight. But yeah, blame the parents. Joy slammed her cue cards down on the table. You know what I'm tired of? Celebrities thinking they're the only ones who see the truth. You played a character in the 80s. That doesn't make you a sociologist. The audience groaned at that one. Even Whoopi exhaled sharply. Ralph didn't bark back. Instead, he spoke slowly, controlled. Joy, you don't need a sociology degree to see when kids are hurting. You don't need a PhD to notice anxiety levels exploding. You don't need a research lab to see kids numb themselves with content that glamorizes self-destruction. You listen. You pay attention. You try to help. Joy fired back instantly. You're talking like the world is ending. Kids have always had loud music, rebellious music. Elvis shook his hips and people fainted. The Beatles grew their hair and everyone panicked. This isn't new. Ralph pointed toward the cameras. It is new. Back then, rebellion was about expression. Now it's about shock value, addiction, and hypersexualization pushed on 13-year-olds. And we can't pretend that's harmless. Denise leaned in. So what do you want exactly? Censorship? No, Ralph said, his voice tight. Responsibility. Joy scoffed. Responsibility from who? Artists? They don't owe you anything. Ralph's jaw clenched. They owe kids a world they can survive. That line hit the table like a dropped weight. The panel went silent for a moment. Even Joy blinked, thrown off. Then she snapped back with a tone that wasn't playful anymore. You know what? Don't lecture artists about saving kids. Parents raise kids, not musicians, not TikTokers, not Spotify playlists, parents. And if someone's child is falling apart because of a song, that household has bigger issues than music. Ralph pushed back his chair, not in anger, but in disbelief. That's the coldest thing I've heard in a long time. Joy muttered, "Oh, please." He stood up. I came here to have a real conversation, not to listen to you trivialize what families are going through. The audience gasped. Whoopi held out her hand, not to stop him, but to steady the room. But Ralph was already done. Call it dramatic, but someone needs to care a little more. Then he stepped back from the table, eyes low, breath shaking just slightly. The stage had officially reached its breaking point.
The studio fell into a strange quiet after Ralph stepped away from the table. He wasn't storming off in a rage. He wasn't putting on a show. He looked like a man who'd hit his limit and didn't recognize the room he was standing in anymore. The audience didn't clap or boo. They just watched him, waiting to see if he'd turn back. Whoopi spoke first, her tone soft. Ralph, you don't have to leave. We can finish the conversation. He paused near the edge of the stage, hands on his hips. I'm not trying to make a scene. I just don't know how to sit there and talk about this like it's a punchline." Joy let out a long breath, and for once she didn't snap back. She looked tired, maybe even a little reflective. "Look, I wasn't trying to trivialize anything. I just don't believe we should act like music is the root of all evil. Kids have a lot more going on." Ralph turned around. "I agree, but music is a mirror, and right now, it's reflecting pain. That should matter to us." For a moment, it felt like the heat in the room eased up. Denise leaned forward. "Maybe the real question isn't whether modern music is corrupting anyone. Maybe it's why so many young people resonate with the darkest lyrics." Ralph nodded slowly. "Exactly." Joy shrugged. "Okay, that's fair. But blaming artists still feels like an easy way out." "I'm not blaming them. I'm asking them to see the world they influence, to notice who's listening, to care a little." That landed differently. Even Joy seemed to hear it. Whoopi looked around the table, then back at the camera. "Parents are overwhelmed. Kids are overwhelmed. Everyone's trying to figure out what's shaping them, what's hurting them, what's helping them. Maybe the point isn't to choose sides. Maybe the point is to look at the whole picture." Ralph returned to his seat. The audience applauded softly, relieved to see him sit down again. There was no big reconciliation, no dramatic apology, just a quiet shift in the air. Like everyone realized the fight had exposed something deeper than opinions, something human. Joy still didn't fully agree with Ralph, but she met his eyes. "For what it's worth, I know you care about this. I just care in a different way." He gave a small smile. "That's all I wanted. A conversation, not a dismissal." The segment wrapped with a gentler tone. No shouting, no lingering resentment. Just a sense that the moment had touched something vulnerable, something real. Ralph wasn't a hero. Joy wasn't a villain. They were two people wrestling with a world that's changing faster than anyone can keep up with. And as the cameras faded, the message lingered. What kids hear matters. What adults model matters. And conversations like this, messy, tense, imperfect, might be the only way forward. If you enjoyed this showdown, subscribe for more unforgettable debates, emotional moments, and conversations that hit deeper than expected.